Good morning. It's Friday, April 18th. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 560 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. Well, another hostage deal offered and another deal rejected by Hamas. No surprises here. The Iran-backed terror group is acting like, well, an Iran-backed terror group. A statement from the White House sums it up neatly, and I quote, Hamas is not interested in peace but perpetual violence. And they're not wrong. It's been nonstop bloodshed since 1988 when Hamas literally burst onto the scene. It started with shootings and bombings. The group then shifted to suicide bombings. Then it shifted to rockets, then tunnels, then mass murder and rape. I believe that Israel is now prepared to put an end to all of this. Finally, now that Hamas has rejected yet another agreement, an Israeli military endgame in Gaza may soon be on the way. Okay, remember last episode when I said we had an incredible guest lined up for Friday? I wasn't kidding. On Wednesday, I caught up with the legendary actress and producer Debra Messing for a pre-recorded conversation. Yes, I know we're in the business here of bringing you wonky guests who geek out on foreign policy. Debra is no wonk, but in my estimation, she has become one of the most important advocates for Israel and the American Jewish community since the October 7th attacks. While many celebrities have either taken the side of Hamas or simply shied away from the camera for fear of controversy, Debra has bravely stepped up and led the way. She also produced the powerful film October 8 with the talented director and former FDD Morning Brief guest, Wendy Sachs. This is an important interview, folks, so stay tuned. Our conversation is coming your way in just a few minutes. Everyone is talking about that New York Times article. You know, the one where Donald Trump reportedly rejected an Israeli plan to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities and possibly exposed some of Israel's plans in the process. First, whoever leaked this needs to get fired now. The impact of this goes beyond Israel. There will be no foreign government willing to trust this White House with their secrets anytime soon. Beyond that, let's just acknowledge the intent behind this leak. There are people in this White House that really don't want Israel to win the war. Now let's look at what Donald Trump said in the wake of this leak. He said that he waved this plan off, but that doesn't mean that he won't greenlight another plan or even approve the same one at a later date. He's just giving those nuke talks with Iran a chance to play out. I actually think this leak may redound to Israel's benefit. The Islamic Republic now knows that Israel is deadly serious, and it knows that Trump entertained the idea before saying no. I hope the regime is nervous right now. It should be, because an attack has not been ruled out. It's been delayed. With the credible threat of a military strike now established, the U.S. negotiators in Muscat need to demand one thing: the complete dismantling of that Iranian nuclear program. That's the only way this thing ends without the attack that Trump waved off. Now let's go find that leaker. On to our headlines. Headline 1, Qatar Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani arrived in Moscow yesterday for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. If this doesn't sit right with you, that's because it shouldn't. Qatar is a major non-NATO ally, and it gets cozy with the Kremlin. Al-Thani told Putin that he's proud of the economic cooperation between Qatar and Russia. Al-Thani and Putin agreed to add 1 billion euros each to a joint investment fund that was created in 2014. The deal will allow for further investment in sectors like tech, healthcare, and minerals. On Ukraine, Putin reportedly thanked Al-Thani for Qatar's efforts in mediating the return of children separated from their families during the war. Beyond that, Al-Thani and Putin lamented the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza. Predictably, neither blamed Hamas, and Al-Thani outright blamed Israel for the war. On Syria, Al-Thani assured Putin that the new Al-Qaeda regime in Damascus wants a positive relationship with Moscow. He would know as one of the major financial backers of that terrorist regime. Headline 2, Hamas is on the verge of bankruptcy, according to reports. The terrorist group is struggling to pay its fighters. The IDF has killed multiple senior Hamas officials since resuming its counteroffensive in Gaza last month, including a Hamas money changer who was reportedly critical for Hamas's fundraising efforts. Other Hamas financiers have gone into hiding. That's a good thing. Citing Arab intelligence officials, the Wall Street Journal reported that most Hamas fighters have only been getting about half of their usual pay. Rank and file terrorists are receiving about $200 to $300 per month. Salaries for government employees in Gaza, those have completely stopped. All of this sounds pretty good to me. Headline 3, the U.S. Treasury sanctioned the International Bank of Yemen. No surprise here, the bank, which is based in Houthi-controlled territory, provides financial support to the Houthis. Treasury also imposed sanctions on the bank's executive general manager, deputy general manager, and the chairman of the board of directors. These 3 guys are responsible for the bank's operations. The International Bank of Yemen, or IBY, is crucial for the Houthis. It provides the Iran-backed rebels access to SWIFT, which is a global messaging system based in Belgium that facilitates transactions between financial institutions around the world. IBY has leveraged its SWIFT access to help Houthi figures and businesses purchase oil. According to Treasury, IBY has also helped the Houthis evade sanctions oversight, mobilize resources, and confiscate assets from the rebel opponents in Yemen. And headline 4, Lebanese forces detained multiple people who fired rockets into Israel last month. The attacks happened on March 22nd and 28th. The Lebanese armed forces, or the LAF as we call them, identified the fighters responsible and arrested at least 2 of them this week. One of the suspects is reportedly a Lebanese national, and the other is a Palestinian man with ties to Hamas. Security and judicial officials told the Associated Press that authorities are questioning 4 Palestinians linked to Hamas. Additionally, the Lebanese army said it confiscated a vehicle and other equipment used in the March attacks. News of this crackdown, if we can call it that, follows Lebanese President Joseph Aoun's calls for Hezbollah to disarm and fold its fighters into the Lebanese army. I'll say it again. I said it last episode. I like the sound of the Lebanese armed forces gaining a monopoly on arms in the country, but I just hope Hezbollah doesn't end up absorbing the Lebanese army. All right, it's time to press play on that interview with the very talented actress, producer, and activist, Debra Messing. Many of you know her for her roles in Will and Grace or the new movie with Robert De Niro, The Alto Knights. I've come to know her as the Hollywood celebrity with a moral compass, maybe the Hollywood celebrity with a backbone. Have a listen. Welcome to the FDD Morning Brief, Debra Messing.
Hi there.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you. I think you're our first bona fide celebrity, although you did mention that Noah Tishby also probably qualifies, and I think she does. But this feels like a little bit different. I want to start with this simple question. Where were you on October 7th, and when did you realize that you would play such an important role in combating anti-Semitism in America?
I was in New York City, where I am now. And honestly, I don't have many clear memories of it. I just have this vague memory of sitting in my kitchen crying and watching the coverage. And then when I saw October 8th, all the celebration and jubilation across the world, that was when I realized something was horribly amiss. And I got involved with a WhatsApp app group of activists, and we started with a letter to President Biden asking him to do everything he could to get the hostages released from 33 countries, and hundreds of people from Hollywood refused to sign it. And that was sort of the cold water in my face of, wow, okay, we're alone. We're really alone. And so if not now, when?
So, okay, I think we now know why you felt the need to speak out. But I think the question that I've always had as I've watched you engage and be very public, was this something that felt natural to you, or have you learned over time how to be an effective advocate and an effective voice? I mean, obviously, you're an entertainer, so you're not afraid of a microphone, but this is a very different kind of microphone, isn't it?
It's completely different. It's a different animal. I grew up watching my parents be very, very involved in Jewish Federation, and they were active Zionists, and they went to Israel many times. And every night they were doing something to support the community or raise money for the community. So I was raised being told that you always have to help if you can. And then I think, stepped into activism when my acting teacher at NYU died of AIDS. Mm-hmm. And so the LGBTQ community, that was my focus for probably over a decade. And then I started feeling, the last 10 years, as I saw people's rights being stripped, and as I saw George Floyd, and I saw, I marched for every marginalized community and met amazing people, leadership that I learned a lot from. But it wasn't really until Charlottesville that I said anything about anti-Semitism. And to be really frank, when this happened and I realized that I was going to be a voice that was out there, I felt very uncomfortable because I had grown up very ambivalent about my Jewish identity. I grew up one of 3 Jews in my community and had horrible anti-Semitism against my family. And so learned very young to hide and to not tell anyone I was Jewish. So obviously now the whole thing is going out and inspiring Jewish pride and saying, I am here and I'm proud and we're not going anywhere. And I think I'm still getting used to that, but it certainly was not comfortable for me.
Amazing. Okay, you went to Israel shortly after the October 7th attacks, and it was your first visit to Israel.
It was.
Tell us about that.
I had never been, which was a surprise because my parents had been so many times and there was always an excuse not to go. But I started getting all of these comments in my Instagram saying that it never happened. It was a lie. Nobody was murdered. Nobody was, and I realized that everyone in Israel, they were totally alone and traumatized. And on top of that, now they see that the whole world doesn't believe them. And so I felt I have to go over there and take videos and bear witness so that I could come home and play those videos of me talking to hostage families, talking to IDF, talking to Nova survivors, so that no one could say to me, you're lying, because I was constantly called a liar. And so when I came back, I felt like, they can't speak here in our community right now. Although now, years later, now they're coming over and they're telling their stories, thankfully. But at the time, I just felt like this urgent need to go and see it with my own eyes so that I could really process the extremity and the barbarism of what had happened so that I could fortify myself with some more strength to fight back.
And what would you say if there was one thing that you saw? Was it the Nova grounds? Was it, what hit you the hardest?
I think going to the kibbutz, and, at the time, we walked in and there was still blood all over, and there were like 1,000 bullet holes in this tiny little 1-room home. And on my tour, I happened to run into parents who had lost their daughter. And so talking to them was, I think, the most difficult thing to encounter and the most potent thing.
Yeah. I recently actually took my first trip to the envelope, to the Gaza envelope. I had postponed it for as long as I could because I really wanted to keep a focus on the war itself and not to get into the horror stories. And those bullet holes are still there. And they're still jarring. And I can just only imagine with the blood being fresh and all of this just only a few weeks old, I can only imagine what that experience was like. You live in New York, but you work in Hollywood, obviously. You mentioned before that the entertainment world has not been great. It's not been necessarily so brave in rallying behind Israel after a slaughter of more than 1,000 people. What has that been like?
Well, I would go much further and say that the response from Hollywood has been atrocious. And it's been very painful to know that when the Jews fled the Holocaust and came to America, and they weren't allowed to be lawyers or doctors or teachers, they weren't allowed to join any profession. So they created entertainment. And every single studio in Hollywood was created by a Jew. And the idea that especially the Jewish people who have made their livelihood out of the hard work of these Jews and are not willing to stand up and say, this is wrong, was absolutely devastating to me. I think I've been going through a mourning process because I really believed that we were past the next generation past, the threat, the existential threat. And as soon as I realized, no, we're back, and nobody is standing up for us and for Israel's right to defend itself from being slaughtered. And much worse than that they were wearing pins with the bloody hand, that we all know what that came from. But I would bet you money that 99.9% of the people in Hollywood who wore that pin have no idea where that came from. The lynching of two IDF soldiers that wandered into the West Bank, and they were pulled apart limb from limb. I have gone through anger. I have gone through sadness. I have felt alienated. I honestly don't know where I stand in my community anymore. I know that I have moral clarity, and I know that I have no regrets. And if people don't want to work with me because I am standing up for my people's right to exist, then I don't want to work with them. So, I tell people that my life now is pre-October 7th and post-October 7th. And friendships, acquaintances, everything has changed. And so I'm trying to be open to whatever my life's purpose is supposed to be at this point.
Well, I'm impressed just at the way that you've approached all of this. I think a lot of us feel that life changed after October 7th. Certainly you've been on a journey.
Yeah.
Part of that journey is this new movie that you were the executive producer of the film October 8.
Yes.
How did that happen? And what has the response been? I mean, we had Wendy Sachs on the program. She's wonderful. I had a cameo in the film, maybe not as impressive as yours.
Yes, you did.
But I mean, what drew you to this particular project, and how's it been going?
I was originally just going to be someone she was interviewing at the very beginning of her process, and we just clicked. And she, basically gave me the rundown of her purpose and asked if I wanted to be very involved as a producer, and I said absolutely yes. I'm sure Wendy told you that everyone said, go for it. This is great. This is important, but no one will touch it. Agents won't touch it. Theaters won't touch it. And I think the thing that is most gratifying is that we were supposed to be in theaters for 1 week. And because of the outpouring, the grassroots work of the Jewish community, it has been in the theater for 4 weeks and counting. Across America now, it's opened in Canada, and it's streaming now on Amazon, and it's touching people. It's making people wake up. And the thing that's really important is that we're hearing from parents that they went back a second time and they brought their teenage kids. And their teenage kids came out saying, oh, now we get it. And, our goal from the beginning has been to have this in every high school in America. And again, this is not litigating the war. This is solely about the extremism that has infiltrated our country, and the threat to our democracy and Western civilization and how we got here. And it's a very scary story, but important. And I'm very, very proud of this film. And people protested in Canada when people are trying to kill this movie. It had 100% response, a verified audience response on Rotten Tomatoes, which never happens. And then on TikTok, there was a campaign that said, we've got to kill this movie. Everybody go and give it a 1-star rating. And so, it's a very volatile, aggressive time. And every day I just try to think, what can I do to move things to a better, safer understanding between people? And it's not easy.
No, it's not. And I think that moving things by a degree is about all we can do, kind of one day at a time. And I think your approach is exactly the right one. I've got one last question for you. You've been incredibly generous with your time. What's next? I mean, we've watched you. You've been on social media. Instagram has been incredible. October 8th, incredible. You've spoken out. What comes next for Debra Messing?
Well, because we had so much support for October 8th, I'm trying to give back and to support other similar films. And there's a film that's coming out called Children of October 7th that is going to air on Paramount Plus. And it's just interviewing the children who survived that day. And so I'm going to moderate the evening after the screening here in New York before it hits Paramount Plus. And so just try to support my community and to speak where I'm invited, and to try and keep people remembering our ancestors, who we are, and that we are strongest when we are united.
All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you, Debra Messing, for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thank you so much.
Quite a journey she's on. Okay, here's what FDD has on tap for you today. Check out my colleague David Adesnik's piece in the National Post, which exposes how the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry continues to manipulate casualty figures to sway public opinion against Israel. Prominent outlets like the New York Times and BBC, as well as the international bodies like the UN, are mindlessly regurgitating these numbers while relentlessly questioning Israel's every move. FDD's Hussein Abdul Hussein has penned a piece for the English language Lebanese outlet This is Beirut. Whether or not a U.S.-Iran nuclear deal comes to fruition, Hussein says that Hezbollah's disarmament should be top priority for Beirut. He also emphasizes that Lebanon's pro-Iran Shia community must wake up and smell the hummus. I mean coffee. The Lebanese people must recognize that Iran will only spell more trouble for their country. Finally, if you haven't heard enough from me today, I've got a new article and a new interview for you. First, you can check out my latest over at Commentary Magazine on the toxic U.S. relationship with Qatar over the years. I also recently appeared on Dan Senor's Call Me Back podcast, where we discussed the U.S.-Iran nuclear deal, a topic that has left Washington and Jerusalem with far more questions than answers. You can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. That is going to do it for today, folks. Quite an episode. If you're looking for something smart to read, check out the expert analysis on our website, FDD.org. Scroll through our quick takes on X at FDD, or find some fascinating video content on our Instagram and YouTube channels. And yes, you can always make a tax-deductible donation at FDD.org/invest. I'm glad you asked. Your contribution to our mission makes this podcast and all of our other work possible. Tune in Monday for another riveting episode of the FDD Morning Brief. I'll be speaking with Juan Zarate, former Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy National Security Advisor for combating terrorism under George W. Bush. He also serves as Chairman and co-founder of FDD's Center on Economic and Financial Power. We'll talk tariffs, sanctions, and much, much more. So have a listen or a watch, whatever you prefer. Until then, have a great weekend. I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.